Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the AP Skills webinar presented by the Bill of Rights Institute. We're so happy to have you here. We're on episode 5 already, which I can't even believe we're on episode 5. These webinars are designed to help you with the skills required for the test. And today we're looking at the argumentative essay. I'm your host, Liz Evans. I'm the Regional Programs Manager here at the Bill of Rights Institute. And I taught AP Government for about 6 years. So I'm going to be monitoring the chat and answering as many questions as I can. However, you are super lucky because today, like every other one, you get to learn from John Burkowski, who is from the Academy for Advanced Academics in Miami, Florida. So I'm going to give the stage to you, JB, and I will be monitoring the chat.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, BRI. And thank you, College Board, for making us have to do this for our wonderful enjoyment on the exam, the argumentative essay. Yay! Not. Well, we will master this. It's no worries. I know maybe you've been struggling with this one. It is different from the previous FRQs because it's an essay. There is more to it, but no worries, no worries. After tonight, you will become GoPros with the argumentative essay. We'll help you out with that. So let's dive in, shall we? All right, you have the tax verbs. By FRQ. In this particular case, what you will be doing, you will be using define. You may want to define your evidence. Describe, for sure. You want to bring in relevant characteristics of the evidence that you use. You will earn a point for that. Here is something explicit to this FRQ. Develop an argument. This is where you will articulate a claim in support of evidence, meaning a thesis. You must come up with a defensible claim and argue in support of it. We're going to dive into that. Don't worry. Draw a conclusion. Don't worry. That's quantitative analysis. Explain. The key to success is to explain. You definitely will be doing this task on this essay, on this exercise. Absolutely, it's part of the reasoning. Got to do it. And identify your claim as you go through your argument. So let's become familiar with the rubric. It is a 6-point rubric. You get 6 points. You can earn 6 points. Let's break it down. All right, thesis. Gotta have a thesis that'll give you 1 point. If you have an acceptable thesis that has a defensible claim with a line of reasoning, awesome. You may notice the little asterisk next to that. I will explain in just a few. 1 point for you choose relevant evidence. Evidence that you describe that is relevant to the topic of the prompt. This is the easiest point, I would say. This is the easiest point. Then you get 2 points for using evidence in support of the argument. So in the sense that you get 1 point if you use one of the foundational documents that is listed for you in the prompt. But remember, it has to support your claim. That's the key thing. That's how you get that point. You gotta make sure you support the claim. Then we go to the second evidence. You bring in another foundational document, a political concept, court case, you name it. It could be from the list given to you. It could be the list of foundational documents provided by College Board. Or again, any political concept. But again, you have to explain how it supports your claim. Then that reasoning, that's about the explanation. And then alternate perspective. And I'm sure for some of you were like, oh, this is a big struggle for me. Alternate perspective. We will get into that. We'll talk about how we can approach that. Now, this is the essay that we'll be using today. So let's just real quick get through it. All right, because of course, when you approach the argumentative essay, and just like any FRQ, you gotta say, what's the question asking me? What do I need to do? Develop an argument. You see that task? Very specific, right off the bat. And basically, I've seen just about every argumentative essay prompt, and it starts with develop an argument, right? Some of them may give you a little bit of context right in the beginning, some background. And then the next paragraph will be develop an argument. So that basically means an essay with a thesis. That explains, there's that task, there's the key to success. Which are the 3 models of representative democracy? So you have participatory, pluralist, or elite best achieves the founders' intent for American democracy in terms of ensuring a stable government run by the people. All right, a lot to get in there, right? And then check this out. Here's the next part you're going to see. You got to use at least one piece of evidence, all right? So if you want to get that full 6 points, you got to use at least one of these foundational documents. And so we have Brutus 1, right, the anti-federalist paper, Federalist number 10 by James Madison, and of course the US Constitution, which yes, includes not just the articles, but the amendments. So that's fine too. So let's try to break down this question. All right. I want to keep reiterating the rubric. I want us to become really familiar with the rubric. And remember, you will get this on the exam. When you get the argumentative essay, you'll see, oh, develop an argument, you'll get a little context, and then it will remind you of the rubric. Articulate a defensible claim or thesis that responds from and establish a line of reasoning. You must do both. Defensible claim, establish line of reasoning. Support your claim with at least 2 pieces of accurate and relevant evidence. Remember, one piece of evidence has to come from one of the foundations listed. Second piece of evidence can come from another one that's listed, or one that you want to bring in, or any course concept. You have to explain, you have to support why the evidence explains why it supports your claim, and then an alternative perspective using these particular tasks. We'll get into that, don't worry. So there you go. Again, the 6-point rubric. So let's break down what the prompt is asking us to do, and then we'll dive into strategies and approaches. We got to develop an argument. So of course you have to go. The 3 models of representative democracy: participatory, you see that I've underlined it with a different color, pluralist, and elite, all with 3 different colors. Best achieves the founders' intent. American democracy, stable government run by the people. Okay. You'll note that a lot of these essay prompts are going to almost make it easy for you. They basically kind of give you a choice and almost set up the, the claim for you. You just have to take a stand. In this particular case, you have to take a stand on one of these 3, right? Don't complicate your life by saying like, I'm going to qualify with participatory. No. Pick one, run with it, okay? And then of course, don't forget one of the foundational documents. I guess what we want to do now is recall the content, right? Okay, what are these 3 models of representative democracy? And let's also recall those foundational documents. So models of democracy, participatory. Recall, right? We are not about to learn, have a lesson about participatory democracy and pluralism. No. By now, I hope you know what all of these are. Just recapping it just so we can better understand how to approach the essay. Right? So with the participatory model of democracy, you get broad participation from the citizens. Right? The citizens have not necessarily a direct democracy, but more of a direct influence, choosing their representatives, having a more direct choice on representatives who then make the public policy, who are then more responsive to the people's interests. Right? They'll implement the people's will. Participatory democracy in our American political system is definitely much more evident at the local and state levels. At the federal level, the federal government's a little distant from the people in regards to its structure and institutions. You see this more here, referendums and initiatives at the local and state levels. Pluralist, all right, another model of democracy, pluralist. Interest groups, okay, all these factions, right, all these interest groups made up of people, all right, but they're made up of people with a mutual interest, a common goal, common agenda. And these interest groups compete with each other to try to influence public policy making. And in essence, it tries, with all the interest groups, they kind of, in their competition with each other, they try to find some mutual goal or mutual agenda between their interests that they could probably use to help influence public policy makers. So these people, these groups, right, they try to find representatives that they think can best achieve their goals, right? Okay. I see that we have a question about creating 4 body paragraphs. I will answer that question as we go through this. Don't worry. But yes, you can. I'll just say that right now in regards to that question. about creating 4 body paragraphs. The first being the thesis, and the other 2 the evidence, and the last one the perspective. Yes. Elite model democracy. This is small group of educated and or wealthy people. They're the ones really developing public policy. They have the most direct influence, direct impact on making public policy. The perception is that these are the best types of people to make public policy. These are the ones that should be the public policy makers. They're more informed about the topics. They're more informed about the issues. And that's why they should be best involved in public policy making. Yes, can they consider the interests of the people in the interest groups? Of course, absolutely. But they know better. They know better, and there are examples of elite model democracy in our American political structure, such as, say, the Electoral College, right? Okay, the foundational documents that were listed were Brutus 1, Federalist 10, and the United States Constitution. And I love when they give it the United States Constitution because, oh my God, there's so much in the United States Constitution that could be used. But then, of course, you have Brutus 1 and Federalist 10. And I'm sure a lot of you will be like, not those. JB, I don't know framers English. And they go on and on and on, and there's so much. Okay, they made Cliff Notes for a reason. Okay, you can go to the Cliff Notes page and search up the main ideas. You don't, I get it. I read the Federalist papers. I read the anti-Federalist papers. And I'm just like, stop, let it stop. But you got to at least get the main ideas of each of these foundation documents. That's what you want to do when you get these foundation documents. All of them, all the ones that are required. Make sure that you jot down, when you review, get the main ideas of each of them. So for Brutus 1, we are recapping here, right? It is from a perspective to oppose the ratification of the Constitution. That's what all these anti-federalists, to a degree, want to do. They're afraid. They're concerned, right? In Brutus 1, he's saying, we want the states. We want to keep the states. It's about keeping those small republics. They're best responsive to the people. They know the people the best. There's that element of direct democracy in these, and that's what we want. People power here, right? This large republic that the Federalists are trying to establish, that is going to be impossible to reflect the interest of all the people. It's too vast. The territory is too vast to try to establish public policy here. So the states are best responsible, and that's how we should set this up. Keep this confederation that we got going on, and not really help to establish this strong central government. Of course, Federalist 10 says, no, a large republic is good. No, we want a strong central government. So stop talking. Yes, Federalist 10, it's all about supporting the ratification of the Constitution. It's James Madison. This is arguably the most important Federalist paper out there. So we want to ratify this Constitution. We want to understand how it's essential to ratify this Constitution, and here's why. And why is most important? Because probably the most important political theory here. This large republic is designed to control all of these factions, right? And factions are interest groups. You could also use political parties. They're dangerous. And if you really remember Federalist 10, and I know you don't see it here, but main idea, because I'm using the main ideas for this particular prompt, their factions are dangerous. You can't get rid of them. You can't get rid of them without violating democratic ideals. So the best thing you can do is to try to control their effects. And that's what the large republic can do. Small republics are vulnerable to factions, definitely vulnerable to factions, because they're so directly linked to the mob rule here, because of that tyranny of the majority, they can be very susceptible to. Because there's not this dilution of their interests by spreading those interest groups thin across a vast republic. That helps to avoid any consolidation of power between these factions. So what's also interesting is that with the strong national government, they can incorporate all of these views from all across the land and actually come up with public policy that can best represent the common good for the republic. Okay, so that's very important. All right. We'll get into the C point, the reasoning part of the essay in just a few. All right, I got a great strategy for you on getting that C point, all right, the reasoning point. And then there's the US Constitution, the Bible, right? The Bible, yes. Oh, the easy one, right? Article 1, Article 2, 3, 4, 5, and the amendments, right? Oh, yes, so much in there we could potentially use. But remember, even though, sorry, JB, I can use anything in the United States Constitution. True. Except you want to use relevant evidence to answer the prompt at hand. Don't get carried away. Don't think that, oh, let me use the 27th Amendment or the 19th Amendment. Whoa. I don't, that's kind of stretching it thin. I don't know where you're going with that, but let's see about the US Constitution relevant context of this prompt. Well, it does establish a strong central government. We know that the Federalist Papers are advocating for that. There is a separation of powers and checks and balances that we see through Article 1, 2, and 3. We could even include 4 when it comes to federalism. That is a sense of checks and balances between federal government and the states, right? We see that, how about the structure here, right? In Article 1, we see how the House is directly elected by the people. The Senate is elected by state legislatures. Originally, let's clear that up, okay? I know 17th Amendment, but originally, right? We're coming at it from the framers' intent. So their intent was to have the Senate elected by state legislatures. President is elected by the Electoral College. And the federal courts are appointed by the president and the Senate, right? Through advice and consent of the Senate. So you'll notice, I always tell my students, this is like, do you see how when we go from the House to the judiciary, how we are close to the people? And as we keep going, right, when we go from the House to the Senate, we start getting away and more away from the people. And that's by design. That is definitely by design. And maybe that can help us develop an argument on which model of democracy could help. So think about that, right? And then, of course, we could include, say, hey, there's an amendment process. Since that, well, what about that, JV? I was like, think about it, right? Who's not involved in the amendment process? Who is involved in the amendment process? Are the people involved? No, not at all, not directly involved at all. There's no judiciary involved, and that's what that makes sense, right? And then, of course, the president's not involved. Who is it? It's the House, it's the Senate, and it's the state legislatures, who are generally, elected by the people of their respective states. Interesting dynamic there. Interesting how that's structured. And don't forget the numbers, right? The amendment process, it's 2/3 of both houses of Congress, it's 3/4 of the state legislatures. That's, maybe that's potential evidence, no matter what model of democracy we decide to go with. Okay, could there be potential other ones? Yes. We don't have the time to deal with that. We want to be efficient. So there it is again. Just like, JB, what's the problem? Oh, there it is. Okay. Yeah. Remember, develop an argument, 3 models of representative democracy, either one of those 3, got to pick one of those 3. Remember, it's about, well, which one do I think best achieves the founder's intent? So of course you got to get at the founder's head, right? And about that stable government run by the people. All right, let's understand this idea of develop an argument. And I want to really talk about this because in examining all of the prompts that have been made available, I've noticed a pattern. It really is that, yes, develop an argument, but the prompts tend to provide the position for you, in a sense, provide the claim for you, the opportunity to make a claim. You don't necessarily have to come up with one out of thin air. It's kind of made right there for you. For example, look at the task verbs here, help or hinder. Right, so you either choose help. It helps. And I'm saying in a general prompt, not necessarily the one that we're using. So I'm making the claim that it helps. Okay, or does it hinder? All right. In regards, real quick, in regards to the Constitution, specifically cite the article number. Not necessarily. It would be nice. It would be really impressive. But we know that you're coming from the United States Constitution when you're talking about the structure of, say, the House of Representatives or the Senate, or you're talking about a particular enumerated power or process from the Constitution, is fine as long as you cite the Constitution. Okay, not necessarily the article, specific article, or even the specific clause. Although it really helps to do that because you want to use specific evidence. But I think really to clarify on that, not necessarily like, oh, I had to say Article 1 because I'm going to talk about the House of Representatives. Like, talk about the House of Representatives. Talk about the specific structure. That is coming from the Constitution. But I think if you had left out Article 1, like, oh, this is where it's located, you'll be all right. Right? I can safely say that. So in regards to taking a position for or against, I've seen these wordings in the prompt. Positive or negative. Okay, make the claim. It's positive. Okay, run with it. Oh no, it's negative. Okay, run with it. But make that claim. Constitutional or unconstitutional. Either or. So, like, for example, what we have here: participatory, pluralist, or elitist. Which one? Pick one. And it's almost as if they're giving you the claim. You just have to make that claim, right? Assume it and run with it, right? So this is awesome. Often it's between two major political concepts. So basically it's like, oh, this particular political concept, is it have a positive or negative influence on this particular political concept? I say often, all right? Don't quote me on this. Be like, oh, JB said, no. Look at the word. Generally, often, okay? But don't quote me too much. Don't think in absolute terms. Is that you can see it. The models of democracy with a stable government, the framers' intent, those concepts between each other. So the format, the structure of these prompts, right, have been extremely consistent. So this is great. This will make life easier for all of us. What you see over here on the right are just examples, just something that you could review, take it to your teacher or with your study group, or just you, and think about what argument you would want to make. Say, for example, what's more important, liberty, individual liberties, or law and order, right? National security. That's actually been a question. That's a very common question, okay? You have the two-party system. Is the two-party system have a positive or negative influence on policymaking, even on the American political structure? Okay, so take a stand, right? It's positive, JB. Okay, but why? And we'll get more into that. The amendment process, very effective the way it's structured, or is it too difficult? Did the framers make it too difficult? Right? What about the War Powers Act? Is it constitutional? What do you think it's unconstitutional? Did Congress give itself too much power over the president regarding war powers, right? Or is it legit? Right? Executive privilege. Is it a necessary power of the president, or has it been abused? All right, or there's a potential for abuse. Okay. What about within or beyond the framers' intent, which is similar to what the question we have here? There could be other intents regarding the framers. Say, like, what is the extent of power for the national judiciary? The Supreme Court. Right. What about campaign finance? Is it helpful, or does it harm American democracy? Take a stand. And these are just a few samples. There's plenty of potential here. And I'm sure you've probably been doing this in your government class. You probably had activities dealing with this, and maybe you've even done an essay or two. But I'm sure you've sat there and be like, wait a minute, let's discuss about freedom of speech. Is it absolute, or is it, should there be these limits to it? When you were taking a stand and you said, no, we have to have these limits. It's, we have to have free speech zones, or yeah, clear and present danger for sure. My next question to you would be, why? Why? Okay, you've taken a stand, awesome, but why? And so you would have to, that's part of this essay here, right? Okay. So this is the official rubric, all right? And we have the thesis, so row A or point A. And I just wanted to make sure that and there are a couple things here that I want to point out. But this is what the rubric said about the thesis. You get the point if you respond to the prompt with a defensible claim or thesis that establishes a line of reasoning. Defensible claim, line of reasoning. Defensible claim, line of reasoning. I'm repeating this because you have to make sure your thesis does two tasks. Establish a defensible claim, and that it establishes a line of reasoning. Line of reasoning is basically telling the reader, I made a claim, and this is how I'm going to support it. I'm going to show you the way. Okay, cool. All right, cool. There's a couple of conditions here. It's, as long as it doesn't restate or rephrase the prompt, and it has to have a claim or thesis, establish a line of reasoning. This is more particular to this prompt. but looky down here. Let's look down here. Let's look down here. The claim or thesis must consist of one or more sentences that may be located anywhere in the response. Really, JV? I can put it anywhere? Technically, yes. I'm going to tell you where you should highly recommend. Okay, but yeah, this actually works for you because as a reader, it kind of gives them some leeway to help you get that point for the thesis. Be like, I don't see it in the introductory paragraph. I don't see it in the last paragraph. And they could find something within the body paragraphs and be like, there, we'll take that. You never know. Right? That doesn't mean that you should put a thesis in every single paragraph, but just there's an opportunity there. Well, I'm going to recommend where you should have a thesis for sure. Okay. So here's it. A claim or thesis that meets the criteria can be awarded the point whether or not the rest of the response successfully supports that line. That basically means you make an acceptable thesis. The rest of your essay is pure garbage. You're writing about who you've decided you've made a claim to the I think it's the participatory model of democracy, and because of what they said in Brutus 1 and an element of the Constitution. And here's who I decided to take the prom. Blah blah blah. Whoa. And it's like, whoa, well, there was they answered the question. They didn't make a claim, and now they're talking about why they're going to take this particular person to prom. You still get the thesis point. You get a point. It's fine. It's fine. It's cool. Right? You get 1 point. Congratulations. All right. And that would be fun to read. And I've actually read that actually wasn't. That actually was an essay I read at the reading, and it's fun. I love it. Okay. Please listen to me. Please listen to me. You see where it says the thesis is everything? Because it is. It is everything. The argumentative essay is, it needs a thesis. It has to. You have to have a thesis. You have to have a thesis. Because there's language in the rubric that says the response must have a defensible claim or thesis. The response must have a defensible claim or thesis. This is in regards to the other points. So, using evidence that supports your claim. Using a second piece of evidence to support your claim. Using reasoning to support your claim. An alternative perspective, as a counterclaim. You don't get those points if you don't have a thesis. If even in your attempt and it's not scored, they say like, nope, they tried, but they did not earn the point. It's over, man. It's over. The most you could earn out of 6 points if you do not earn a thesis. 1. You can only get 1 point max. If you don't have a thesis, an acceptable thesis, 1 point, maybe. Remember, that's the potential 1, but only that's the max. So that's the max. This is extremely important. This is extremely important, and I know there's a lot of pressure when it comes to the argumentative essay because you have to have that thesis. It puts so much pressure on you because the other FRQs, they're different. Why? Because you don't need a thesis on them. You don't need one. Concept application, quantitative analysis, SCOTUS comparison, absolutely no thesis required at all. This, yes. Or it's just 1 point max. So make sure that you understand this, okay? All right. I'm a little full disclaimer. I want to be honest with everybody. I really want to be honest with you. I'm not really one for formulas. I'm not really one for, but I am one for, I want you to do well. And those of you that it's a little tough for me to try to develop my writing skills, especially around this time. So I want to keep it simple for you. And I know that thesis formulas can be a great foundation for you to develop your writing skills. So yeah, let's use a formula for your sake, for your success, for your mastery of government. So I'm going to keep it simple. And maybe you're familiar with this. Maybe you're familiar with the thesis formula. Your teachers probably used it. You've probably seen it in some form or fashion in another AP course. I just want to simplify it because I want to simplify it in the sense of, well, what does the rubric need? So here we go. We have why, because, A, and B. That's the thesis formula here. See, why, because, A, and B. What's the why? That's your defensible claim. That's your claim. All right. You see how it's underlined? You see how it's underlined? That's the line of reasoning. That is, and this is why I made this thing. I was going to show you. The A and the B, these are your analytical categories. Your teacher also probably says, like, that's your evidence. That's the evidence that you're going to use to support your claim. And that could be the foundational documents or this is to address the required evidence to support the claim. All right, for example, and here's some basic examples, basic examples, just to show you can model it. Jaws rules is the best movie ever. That's true. No conceding this Jaws rule. Because, right, of the amazing direction and memorable original soundtrack. So if I were to write this essay, and I kind of have, my claim is that's, somebody asked us, like, well, what do you think is the best movie ever? I go, it's Jaws rules as the best movie ever. Because amazing direction. So in my essay, I'm going to talk about and describe and explain the amazing direction and why it makes Jaws an awesome movie. And I'm also going to, in another paragraph per se, an original soundtrack. I'm going to get into that. And you see how it says like amazing or memorable. So yeah, I got to really justify why I'm establishing it this way. But within these relevant categories, right? Here we go. Districts should extend the school year. Everybody's like, what? No. Some people are for this. And as a matter of fact, real quick anecdote. I did this as a writing seminar in the summer one time with students, and a good majority of them said, yeah, we should have more school. So hey, this you. District should extend the school year. That's the claim, right? Of course, the other claim would be no, the district should not extend the school year or keep the traditional school year. But remember, because American society is modernized, so that would, you get into that, talk about what is it about modernized American society that would extend the school year. And then, of course, must become more competitive in the world. Ooh, we got to talk about that and explain why this is why we should extend the school year. So do you notice a pattern? Claim, but then the word because. Do you need to use this word? Is this necessary? Is this required? Absolutely not. Can you use it? For sure. Definitely. Yeah, go for it. Can you use some variation of it? Yes. It's fine. If you want to be more sophisticated in how you write your thesis statements, go ahead. As long as you have the element of because. It's like, make my claim. Can you do it in more than one sentence? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. You can make the claim and then establish your line of reasoning in a second sentence. It's up to you. Remember, the rubric says 1 or 2 sentences. It's fine. All right. So that's the formula. Can't keep it simple. My good friend here, Liz, I'm going to use her approach real quick. All right. English Evans thesis approach. All right. She recommends to restate the prompt and to choose a side and then tell me why, which in essence is there's the defensible claim, choosing a side, and then tell me why is your line of reasoning. And restating the prompt kind of helps you focus on answering the prompt and giving the reader a sense of, all right, they're explicitly trying to address the question here. Okay? So if you want to be a little bit more sophisticated, here's a complex thesis. All right, if you want to do that, that's where you throw in the alternative perspective. Although X, you could start off that way. Can you do this in 2 sentences? Could you do a counterclaim in 1 sentence and then your claim in the second sentence, or vice versa? Definitely. So although X, that's really dealing with the counterclaim or the alternate perspective. We're not talking about explaining it. We're just talking about establishing it. Yeah, this is what you would be dealing with when you get to the alternate perspective. But if you want a complex thesis, it's cool. It's recommended. Tell the reader, impress the reader. It's fine. Is it necessary to do to do an although X or however X or something like that, or X however Y because A and B? No. Remember, all you need is a defensible claim and a line of reasoning. But if you want to kind of remind yourself about establishing a counterclaim, it's cool. All right. With English Evans, her complex thesis basically restate the prompt, choose a side, tell me why, but then what is the other side's claim and why is yours better? This kind of reiterates your claim in response to that alternate perspective. Well, in regards to having two reasons in the thesis, your line of reasoning technically could be one reason, technically. But remember, you are required to use two pieces of evidence. So it would be recommended to establish two analytical categories, one for that foundational document that you must use, and then a second category to address the other piece of evidence, no matter what it is. So yeah, I recommend two reasons in the thesis. Okay, so the approach to the thesis. The thesis statement should be in the first paragraph. I would go with trying to attempt a thesis in the first paragraph. Make your defensible claim in your line of reasoning right there. Do it. No need for context, no anecdotes, no narratives, none of this. Well, let me tell you about participatory. No. All right, look, in regards to the framers' intent, they really intended, blah, 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 blah. You're going on and on. No. Some of you probably have taken AP history and you had due contextualization and all that. Forget about it. Write a thesis. Done. JB, it's not going to be a paragraph. So it's not. That's not. It doesn't matter. The rubric doesn't say. Better be a full paragraph. No. Better have nice grammar. No. Better be really sophisticated. No. Thesis statement. If it's one sentence and then you're moving to the next paragraph, congratulations, awesome. So don't stress about this. Forget the anecdotes, forget the context. Don't worry about it. Just write the thesis and move on. It is recommended to use the language of the prompt, as you saw with the English evidence. Restate the prompt. That is recommended. Okay. Now restate the prompt exactly. Right. Remember, use the language of the prompt. And then with time, here's what I really recommend, especially when it comes to the thesis. If you have time, and I hope you do. In that last paragraph, just what I call reaffirm the thesis. I'm not saying to restate what you established in the first paragraph, because here's what I mean. As you're developing your essay, going through the body paragraph, for a lot of students, they kind of start figuring out their argument. And this, they're like, oh, my thesis. So if you want to just maybe modify your thesis again and make it more sophisticated, more complex, be like, oh, I get it. And you're looking at your initial thesis and you're like, I don't know if that's too vague or too generic. Then reaffirm it. Bring it back. But JB, remember, it's no matter where it is. If you don't make it in the first time, it's fine. Remember, it's anywhere in the essay. So if it's again at the last, cool. So it's good. Don't worry. All right. Here's the essay again. Oh, JB. So we've gotten really over the most important part of the essay, which is the thesis. Because remember, without it, you can only get a max of 1 point. I also got to remind you of something, and I'm going to try to keep my opinions to myself a little bit here, but the FRQs, you have concept application, and it's just 3 parts. You have quantitative analysis, it's also 3 parts. You have the SCOTUS comparison, which also 3 parts, even though that's forecast. And their suggested time is 20 minutes. There is no thesis. They're not essays, they're just, little, almost like short answer question, right? Just answer the question. And then here comes the essay. The last one, right? Q4. Here's the essay, argumentative essay. And you need to have a thesis. And we're gonna give you 40 minutes to do this. And you're gonna have to do all of these tasks that are give you 6 max points. And it's worth the same as the other 3 FRQs. What? Yeah, it's worth 12.5%. Just like the other FRQs. Don't ask me why. I didn't come up with it. I'm just the messenger. Just so you realize. Okay. But the thesis is what really distinguishes this FRQ from the other ones. Right? Because you don't need a thesis in the other FRQs. But here you do. You absolutely must. All right. We're back to the essay again. Here it is. Here's the sample thesis. Using the basic formula, the founders intended to develop a pluralist democracy model. There's my claim. Oh, I used it. I used language from the prompt. There it is. I decided to go with pluralist democracy. I'm going to go with that. That's what they intended. Because they established a large republic to control factions. That's my one analytical category. And I'm sure if you're reading this, you're like, that sounds like Federalist 10. Did I need to use Federalist 10? No. Could you cite Federalist 10? Yes. All right. And so my second analytical category, separation of powers to include different interests in public policy making. I wonder what I might use there. I could talk about separation of powers, but I could also use the US Constitution. Okay. But notice how I'm establishing them to say this is why I went with pluralist democracy. Right? The more complex, throwing in that alternate perspective, although certain federal positions require indirect elections and appointments among elites. So the elite the elite model. The founders intended. So I'm just using what I put here. But imagine in my essay, I probably would be dealing with elite. My alternate perspective would be talking about the elite model of the founders. All right. Here's the rubric when it comes to evidence. So you notice row B, 0 points is because you didn't do anything. All right. You didn't write accurate. 1 point, one piece of evidence that is relevant to the topic of the prompt. Relevant to the topic of the prompt. This is the easy point. You can get this point without the thesis. All right, but remember, the thesis uses one piece of specific and relevant evidence to support the claim or thesis. By the way, you can get this point, the second point in row B, if you don't use one of the foundational documents. You can still get this point. If you do not use one of the listed foundational documents, you cannot get this third point. You cannot get this third point. Basically, you have to do this twice. But for one of them, you have to use one of the listed foundational documents. Right? And remember, see, look here. To earn 3 points, the response must use one of the foundational documents listed in the prompt. And then boom, to earn 2 or 3 points in row B, the response must have a defensible claim or thesis. I wasn't making it up. Reasoning. Explain how or why. Oh, JP, no, not the how or why. I can identify, I can describe, I know the who, what, when. Oh, forgot that one. But the how and the why, no. Well, you still gotta do it. Must explain the relationship between the evidence provided and the claim. Basically, why did I use this evidence? Why is this evidence going to support my claim? And again, remember, it's gotta have a defensible claim. So I like to use ACE, and I've been using ACE in the other FRQs. You've seen this in your probably in your English language or some form or fashion of it. Claim, evidence, commentary. Claim, the argument is proven, or at least supporting the argument. Evidence, the facts are and commentary. All right. I used it and modified it to call it ACE. A, answer or identify the claim. Cite, which would be to describe relevant characteristics of the claim. This will help you with that first evidence point. And then E, expand. Explain how the claim responds to the question. Connecting to political concepts, close the loop. That's going to be the reasoning. It's also going to help with those supporting the theme, because that reasoning is what's going to help support your claim. Using relevant evidence that can support the claim, and then, of course, the reasoning. So that's the key right there. This is especially important. Okay, when you're doing a body paragraph, this is a recommended structure for your body paragraphs. Maybe have a topic sentence to establish the first analytical category, A. Then ACE it. Identify the listed foundational document. In that A of ACE, you will use the evidence, the specific evidence of the foundational document. Go with the foundational document first. Go with it first. Use it first if you have to, all right, if you want to get full points. C, describe relevant characteristics of that foundational document. Okay, relevant characteristics, not everything, relevant characteristics. And then, of course, the key to it all, explain how that foundational document you use supports your claim, your thesis. What about the next paragraph? All right, topic sentence. Okay, I'm sorry, there should be, it could be for the second analytical category, but identify second piece of evidence. I recommend that you use another one of the listed foundational documents. I recommend that. Absolutely. Why? It's a spare tire. You may not get the full points. JP, what if I bomb on one of them? Then what? I was like, well, you either way, because the second piece of evidence could be any foundational document that's listed, that's not listed, or any political concept. But yeah, you may not get 6 points because if you bomb on one of these pieces of evidence, but you still get 5. I mean, a foundational document, it could work for you. It helps you out. I mean, you're just looking at it, you're like, if I'm familiar with it. Now, if you want to go with the second piece of evidence that you're more familiar with, it's not listed, by all means. by all means, go for it. All right. Okay, so this is basically repeating what we were doing in the previous paragraph, right? So as of right now, before we get into alternative perspectives, we have a paragraph for thesis, which is basically 1 or 2 sentences. We could establish a paragraph, one body paragraph for one piece of evidence or foundational document. So now we're up to 2 paragraphs. Then another paragraph, a third paragraph that deals with a second piece of evidence. Now we're at 3 paragraphs. And now the alternate perspective. So to go back to the question about like how can we get that row C point, just real quick, it's ACE. Just to be explicitly clear about that, it's ACE. Especially the E part. When you ACE this paragraph, when you ACE this foundational document or any other piece of evidence, make sure you do the E part. Right? That's what's going to help you get the reason. That is definitely what's going to get. By the way, the rubric says that you can score the reasoning point with just one of the evidence. Okay, you just get one of it. So as soon as a reader, I can see that first body paragraph. You explained, you showed how your evidence supports your claim through that reasoning. Got that point done. Even if you don't do it in the next paragraph, you're good. You just need to do it for one piece of evidence. That reasoning can be earned with just one piece of evidence. Do it for both, of course, but remember, that's what the rubric says. Right? So just to kind of help you there. Alternate perspective. Okay, this one you probably have been dealing with this in class. You're like, why? What do we do here? Okay. It says to respond to an opposing or alternate perspective using refutation, concession, or rebuttal. I think when they throw in all these refutations, then I think it's confusing because they almost make it confusing. But we'll be more efficient and strategic with this. But I want to make sure that I got to point out something for you to make sure that you get this point. You have to do 2 things. You have to do 2 tasks to earn this alternate perspective. You have to identify and describe the alternate perspective. So for example, you said, oh, it asked to help or hinder. So I went with help. Now you have to go with hinder. That's the alternate perspective. Oh, it hinders. And then you identify and describe it. And then you have to either refute, concede, or rebut that perspective. And that's where you can throw in ACE again. Okay. But remember, the only way to get this point is gotta have a thesis. So let's get into the refute, rebut, concede thing. Just refute or rebut, almost the same, but not the same. So what do we mean by refute? When you get that counterclaim, right? When you refute, and I wouldn't focus too much on like, am I refuting or am I rebutting? Don't stress yourself over that. Do not stress yourself over that. Please don't do that. Okay? Really kind of go with these general tasks. Like, all right, when you refute, you're technically doing this. You're describing, which you have to do, and notice how it's underlined, and explain, prove how the counterclaim is false. So, for example, in the example, it was a Constitution and through separation of powers and Federalist 10. I could potentially use Brutus 1. Okay, I'm going to go with Brutus 1 in that anti-federalist perspective. But in refuting, I am saying, hey, you know what they said in Brutus 1? They're wrong, but you got to prove that they're wrong. That whatever they said is definitely false, definitely wrong. You got to be able to prove that. Okay, it's kind of saying that, hey, somebody says the sun rises in the west, and you're all like, it rises in the east. You just refuted it because that's definitely false. Right now, rebut, and this is probably what you're going to be doing more often. When you get this chance, you describe the counterclaim, which you have it, and it's really in essence of and. Explain, argue why it's wrong. This is where you're arguing. You're really arguing. This is what generally happens. You can look at JP. The Federalists had a very great point. They argued very well. But you know what? The Anti-Federalists had some good arguments on their behalf. I get where their position. That's really rebutting. You're kind of like, I get what you mean, and I understand that perspective, and it's logical, it's reasonable. But let's understand why my claim is better. Let's understand why the Federalists have a they made it, they had a better argument. That's really rebutting. That's good old argument, right? So refuting is all like, no, you're totally false. Rebutting is all like, I get you, but, right? Okay, concede. JB, how do you concede? Here, I got a real good strategy, an efficient strategy when it comes to the day of the exam. Really good when it comes to concede. All right, here's what you're gonna do. All right, you're not gonna do it. Don't do it. Don't worry about conceding. No. I get it because we're being really sophisticated. Concede really means, okay, everything I just wrote, as beautiful and as logical as it is wrong. And here's why. and the other side of the coin is actually that's the right side. That's Brutus one, totally correct. Totally correct. Everything I just said about Federalist and the United States Constitution, forget about it. No, I was just JK. JK. That was my claim. I don't know what I'm talking about because Brutus one is the correct one. That's because you're conceding. You're conceding the Brutus one. Like, hey, Brutus one, you did it. Fantastic. Or you're conceding like everything I just said about arguing for pluralist society, pluralist democracy. Elitist is the way to go. This is confusing. When you really, I think when you get into the reality of the situation here with the exam and all that, just don't do it. Don't try to attempt this. All right. It's again, recommendation. If you want to say like, JB, I get it. My teacher taught me very well about how to concede. I'm going to be like, hey man, more power to you. Go for it. All right. That's it. But really, if you're struggling, you're like, JB, give me the simple, efficient way to approach alternative perspective. Then forget about trying to master concede or even deal with it. Do what you see there. Address the counterclaim, describe it, and then explain why it's wrong. All right. Reaffirm your position. Reaffirm your claim. Go back to be like, I get what you're trying to say, but. Right? So like you can see some language that you could use here. You describe the counterclaim and then say, however, and you reinforce your claim in response to the counterclaim. Okay. So you can see all these examples here, liberty or national security and order. So you may take the position of it's all about individual liberties. You got to have freedom. And so you support that. Then you get into like, it's totally understandable to be concerned about national security. We have to keep our citizens safe. You know, there are threats in the world. See how you do. However, okay, and then you start reaffirming how we have to be careful that we don't let national security violate our granted, our guaranteed individual liberties, and you kind of keep establishing the reasoning there. Yeah, that's what you want to do in alternate perspective. I know it could be tough. I know, especially if you're like, hey, I'm still trying to get everything. I'm still trying to establish my claim. I get it. I get it. But this is how you can approach alternative perspective. Think about the other side every time. That's why I gave you this list here. These sample few potential arguments to have. And it's just, and by the way, it's just good old wisdom out there. You always want to know about the other side. Your best offense is having that great defense. Going to the other side and be like, I want to understand where you're coming from. I want to, poke the holes in my argument so I can reinforce my argument. Okay, they may have some logical reasonings there, but figure it out. And then as you go stronger in your claim, you can find weaknesses in the counterclaim. Okay. So you use ACE in regards to alternative perspective. You can have a topic set. By the way, topic census is not necessary. It's just recommended. It's good writing structure. Identify the alternative perspective. Describe the relevant characteristics or evidence of this. Refute or rebut the counterclaim, and then explain the refutation or rebuttal to that counterclaim. It's basically acing. You have to do this because remember, you have to describe that alternative perspective and then refute or rebut it. So it's basically acing again. So that's how you can get that real deep point. Got to do that. You can't just be like, can't acknowledge it. You can't be like, it's all about the pluralist democracy. And the framers were all probably thinking about elitist democracy, but they're wrong. So we're moving on. No. Why are they? Right? It is in regards to bringing in evidence for the alternative perspective. I would because you want to make sure that you demonstrate to the reader this is why they're wrong, or this is how I'm going to refute or rebut them. And you always want to use specific evidence in your body paragraphs. Always be specific. Yes. All right. Okay. we are going to look at a sample essay response real quick. By the way, the link is here. So if you're all like, JP, we didn't have a chance to really dive into it, you can, because it is accessible to you through the link through this presentation. We're going to kind of get out of here and look at this, and I've done it with the ACE. So here we go. Here's a thesis. We've already looked at this, right? We've already said it. So I went with pluralist democracy. I went with that. That's my claim. I was like, the founders intended to develop pluralist democracy model. Right? Some people are like, but JB, how do you know it? I go, it's because I understand government and politics. That's what you understand. You use your understanding to do this. It's not about kind of true or anything. It's just making a defense. Because, and here's my analytical categories: large republic and separation of powers. We already dealt with this. So here's body paragraph. Okay. And this is required foundational document. So I went with Federalist 10. So I had a topic sentence here: founders intended for pluralist democracy, kind of reiterating what the question here. To represent the common good, interest groups encompass different interests in general. Federalist 10, very specific. Federalist 10 demonstrates how the founders established a large republic to control interest groups. Going with that analytical category. Now I'm describing Madison argued, large republic, numerous factions, difficult for them to coordinate, efforts to consolidate power. That's describing Federalist 10. Now it's all like, how does this support my claim though? How does this, to control the factions? The large representative democracy would foster a variety of opinions and encourage the vast factions to cooperate to make laws best suited for the common good. There you go. Body paragraph, second evidence. Again, to compete for support of represent the United States Constitution. That's the foundation. I'm using that as second piece of evidence. Anything else could have worked. Federal government based on separation of powers as a means to best include diverse levels of interest. Well, all right, well, let me describe some relevant characteristics of that. Sets up a House of Representatives directly elected by the people. See how specific I am? Senate originally chosen by the state legislatures. President chosen by the Electoral College. National Judiciary appointed by the President with approval from the Senate. Very specific. Back to that question somebody asked, do I have to put Article 1? No, you notice I didn't do that here. But this is true, and a lot of this is specific. So it's like, well, why is this important? How's it? By having the branches of government chosen by the people, the states, and elites, they represent diverse interests across the political spectrum to best develop the most responsive and effective public policy. Yeah. And then the alternative perspective. The anti-federalists. You'll notice that I don't use Brutus 1, but I don't need to. I could have thrown it in there. You could throw it in there if you want. The anti-federalists argue more for a participatory model of democracy. See how I'm going with another one of the three, all right? So that's an alternative perspective. Maybe the framers intended for a participatory model. Perhaps. Let's see. Let's get into that. They argued more for that. Under small governments like states, closest and more directly responsible to people. Interesting perspective. And I go, while anti-federalists believe the large and strong national government threatened or limited the power of the people. So I'm actually kind of throwing in the alternate perspective that kind of takes a jab at my argument, my claim. But then I'm like, whoa, let me rebut you for a second. Small republics could become more susceptible to the tyranny of the majority. Ooh, specific evidence. In a small state, a faction could easily persuade a majority of the people to do the laws favoring the faction. Large republic would make it extremely difficult for an interest group to convince a broad and diverse population over extensive distance. I'm reiterating what Federalist 10. I'm reiterating that it's rebutting it, it's reaffirming and my argument, my claim. Yeah. So remember, you can look at this kind of an idea. The rubric itself, actually, that I posted in there has other examples based on this particular question. So you got that going for you. All right. This is a sample argumentative essay, another one. It actually uses almost the same foundational documents, Brutus 1 and Federalist 10. We got to get into those, but this one uses the Articles of Federation. It is a different question about the federal system of government, federalism, policymaking, national government have increased relative to state governments. Here it is. See, little context, little background. But there it is. Develop an argument. Whether the expanded powers of the national government benefits or hinders. See, I told you. That was good. So now your claim is gonna be like, I'm gonna go with benefit. Okay. All right. Or I'm gonna go with hinder. And then what are you gonna do in your alternative perspective? I chose benefit as my claim. I'll go with hinder as my counterclaim. There it is. Oh my God, you just figured out your essay. Just like it's how consistent these questions are. So, and then of course you already know Brutus 1 and Federalist 10. You can take this so many ways. I've already annotated for you. You see the blue and the red. If you want samples and you want scoring commentary regarding that particular essay, you can just click the link here. It is available in this presentation that you can access on this channel. So with that said, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that I've made the argumentative essay much more, almost kind of redundant there. I hope easier. I hope you understand it better. I hope you feel much more confident about the argumentative essay. Remember the thesis. Always got to make sure you make a thesis. No question about it. Go for the max 6. Follow the structures. Try to keep it simple. But remember, specific evidence. Follow that structure. Don't go overboard. Don't do like AP history essays. Don't be like AP Lang or lit essays. Answer that question. Get that thesis, and you're good. And you're good. Okay, but remember, explain. Gotta have that reasoning. Gotta have that reasoning. All right. If you have any more questions, I'm here at your pleasure, at your disposal. But that's it. I'm good right now. I'm done.
Yeah. And I think too, just to kind of reiterate what you said, JB, like these are not AP US history essays. So I think a lot of times people hear essay and think they have to write this big thing. No, that's why JB went over the rubric. Like that's the stuff you need to have, and that's the stuff we want. So thank you all for joining us. We really hope you join us tomorrow. We're going to be looking at Unit 1 and kind of some of those principles and skills that you need to go over. But thank you, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Bye.